Okay, welcome. And I'm Takatoshi Ito, Director of the Program on Public Pension and Sovereign Funds at the Center of Japanese Economy and Business, CJEB, at Columbia Business School. And I'm also a professor at the School of International Public Affairs at Columbia University. We are very much delighted that you've joined us for Women and the Labor Market in Japan, Our Challenges. This event is part of the CJEB's Japanese Management Leadership Program, which was created by Yumiko Shimabukuro of SIPA and Ryoko Ogino of CJEB. Before turning it over to speaker, I will introduce the center very briefly. CJEB was established in 1986, and our mission is to promote knowledge and understanding of the Japanese economy, its business systems in international context. CJEB is the only research center focusing on Japanese economy and its business systems within university setting in North America. So that this makes CJEB very special in United States. I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker, Nobuko Nagase, Professor of Labor Economics and Social Policy at Ochanomizu University. I'll introduce Professor Nagase briefly, but please check her bio in the booklet for more information. She has written about work, family, and social policy from the Asian perspective, comparing Japan with other East Asian and Western economies. The results of her research have been published in various scholarly journals, including Japanese Economic Review, Journal of Population Problems, Econometric Review, Asian Policy Economic Review, and Quarterly Journal of Social Policy. She recently authored Women's Career and Family in Japan, Labor Practice, Gender Wage Gap, and Child Rearing. Before I pass the baton on to Nobuko, I want to take a moment to thank our corporate and individual sponsors listed in the booklet you received for their generous donations. These gifts allow us to continue developing and delivering exceptional programming like this. Thank you very much. After Nobuko's presentation, we'll have time for Q&A. So please think of some good questions. Okay, so I think I'm done with the introduction, and please start your presentation.
Thank you. It's such an honor for me to speak before such many Columbia students, and I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me to this very important conference or the meeting. I just published a book, this one. This has 30 years of my effort into it. And it was so nice that Professor Ito invited me over to speak about this book. And to introduce myself, I worked at the bank for 4 years before I went into, then I quit work and I re-entered University of Tokyo Economics Department, and because there was no childcare leave then. And I thought maybe having master's degree might help me. And I ended up in PhD course somehow. And so I got master's and also PhD. But I never thought that I could be able to become a professor because it seemed like such a difficult thing to do. But when I had my PhD, it was so interesting to do research about women in Japan. And it was such an enjoyable time that when I got this PhD, somehow it was very well accepted and I got the job. And ever since then, the research of women in Japan has motivated me so much that I'm very happy to share my journey with you. Okay, so this is a book launch about this book. And this is a book that was just published. And so I will first start with how the Japanese women's employment are in international comparison. Okay, this is from OECD statistics. This red line is Japan. In 1950s, Japan's labor force participation rate was very high because we were agricultural countries, and many women worked in agriculture, farming, small firms, family firm. And so it was very high, but in 1970s, it went down when salaried workers increased with economic development. And then after that, it started to increase, but the increase, this black line is US. So US started very low, but it increased very rapidly, whereas in Japanese labor force participation was more slower. But this was when Abenomics started, when Womenomics started, and after then, the Japanese labor force participation rate went over what it was in the US. So it seems like the labor force participation rate has risen quite well in the past maybe 10 years. How about wage gap? Let's see. This is also from OECD. This red line is Japan, and this black is US. So in the early period, the wage gap in US was as large as what we found in Japan. But Japanese wage gap decline was sluggish for many years. But when we look at the years when Womenomics of Abe Prime Minister was there, well, it's still very high, but it was on a good declining trend. So are we doing well? My answer is no, not at all, not at all. Okay, let's look at this is my work with Dr. Lorraine Dearden of University UCL, so London, University, London. and we both used, this is UK using labor force survey. This is the median income, annual income by age. We made regression. And this is a regressed line of median income of UK, Japan, and US for males. Japanese wage is known for seniority-based. And as you see, it rises in the 40s and 50s. So it just shows the characteristics of Japan. How about women? When I published this in Nikkei newspaper, called Keizai Kyōshitsu, economic class. Many people, I had so much repercussion from it. And Japan, it's so low. This is university graduates. So in US, if you are university graduates, you get about $50,000. This is from 2015 to 2017 using CPS. In UK, you get around $30,000. And in Japan, in Japan, just $17,000. And one of my master student came up to me. She had 2 master courses from my university and also from Hong Kong University, which is not so easy to get in and graduate. And she said, oh, I never thought I was a median. I just earned as much as 70. So she is a graduate of 4-year university. She has 2 degrees from Hong Kong University and Ochanomizu University. And she was a part-time lecturer of many. She was very popular, but she earned just that much. And that really came to my heart, because if I wasn't being able to become a regular worker when I graduated University of Tokyo, I would be in the very same shoes as she was. And many of my very intelligent friends were in the same shoes. So, actually, this kind of regression was not done so much in Japan, so I get much repercussion from many people when I had this in the newspaper. So this is one problem. Japanese university graduate, not even university graduate, average Japanese, according to PISA score, the OECD math, readings, and science score, Japan is in the top level, both men and women. But the income level of women, it's so low. And this means that we have to do something. We are not making good use of what resources we have. And the second problem is this, increase in the childless women. This is from OECD statistics. And for a woman who was born in 1970 to 1975, the childlessness is about nearly 30%, it's 28%, and it's the highest among OECD countries. I have done many interviews to these women too, and are they intentionally single? Are they forming great career and choosing to be single? The answer is not really. Many are not in the good economic situation. And many kind of thought of forming family, but kind of put off till they became like in the age 40, 45. So this, even though if you happen to be single and 40 and 50, I'm sure you are happy, right? You are not, even if you aren't earning that much, you can lead a good life. So I'm not saying that they are very unhappy people, but it's not that they intendedly chose to become childless because they wanted to have good career. It's not so. So this is another very important point that I would like to point out to you about present-day Japan. And in the chapter 2, I looked at historical development of Japanese women's labor. I compared this with Quiet Revolution. Do you know Claudia Goldin? She is a Nobel Prize winner in economics last year, I think. In 2023. And do you know about Problem That Has No Name by Betty Friedan? Have you ever read it? No. Oh, okay. I have heard about it, but I read it for the first time when I was a visiting scholar to Cornell, and I attended labor economics class, undergraduate. And I was given a chapter to read in Betty Friedan, and it's about it was published in like 1960s, and it's about white-collar middle-class women preparing meal, making bed, taking care of children in a nice atmosphere, and asking oneself, is this all in my life? Is this all that I can get in life? Well, I must be okay because I have good husband, good family, good children, but I have some kind of urge in my heart that Betty Friedan called problem that has no name. And Betty Friedan talked this to people, and many women came up to her and told her that she was feeling that way, that she was feeling some kind of urge. Is this all in my life? Is it that I'm preparing food and looking after children for all my life? So that was a very famous book. And then, if you haven't heard about Claudia Goldin's Quiet Revolution, she's calling that when young women saw their future as having career throughout their life, they changed their behavior. And that caused revolution in everywhere. But it's not revolution of fighting. It's a very quiet revolution that is coming very, not you don't even realize the change, but it's a revolution that woman is having work and planning to have work for lifelong when they are young. So when I read Claudia Goldin's Quiet Revolution, I wanted to compare that with Japan. And since I have been doing empirical work for very long, my conclusion is we had delayed era of professional housewives. I call professional housewives instead of full-time housewife because in Japanese it is sengyo shufu. Sengyo shufu has connotation of kind of prosperity, better income, doing household work, but doing it very well. So Dr. Vogel's who wrote about, do you know the なんだったっけin 1980s 有名なYeah, very famous. Vogel wrote about Japan as number one. Japan as number one. And his former wife wrote about professional housewife in Japan. And she translated Sengyo Shufu into professional housewife. And I thought that was a very good translation. Not just full-time housewife. Full-time housewife in English has connotation of low education, low ability. But in Japanese, Sengyo Shufu does not have that kind of connotation. So maybe professional housewife is the right word. And why the professional housewife of Japan came in the era of 1980s to 2008? Because before 1980s, like 1970s, 60s, 50s, many women had to work in farm. So many of the mothers were working mothers for many of the households. And only the very well-to-do family had full-time housewife with many maids. So full-time housewife or professional housewife had a connotation of good image in Japan. And economic growth allowed very average people to become full-time housewives. Well, I got married in the era of 1980s. But many of my friends did not want to become professional housewives. So actually, we were like Claudia Goldin. We were wanting to have career in life. However, on average, maybe many Japanese women did not despise of being a professional housewife in 1980s, 90s. But as the year went on, many did not want to become that they delayed marriage, they delayed birth, and they had longer single life. And that ended up in non-childbirth and non-marriage. And because the labor market is not good for women, so they are not in the high income category right now. So I'll go to next one. And then chapter 3, this is my PhD thesis in 1995. So this is very old, but Professor Seike Atsushi, whom I've known for years, he said, Nagase-san, things haven't changed, so your PhD thesis is not old. And it's not old. Well, for the first time, I was getting microdata, and I was doing analysis, and I was going to do the same thing that what was done in the US and UK and other countries, estimating labor supply curve for women. But it did not go well. And I found that many previous researches using Japanese data never went well when you were estimating work hours. When you were estimating work participation, it went well. Like if your husband's income is high, you are not participating. If you have small children, you are not participating. However, if you estimate work hour, even if you use Heckman method of selection, it was really strange. If your husband has high income, you are working long hours. If your children is small, you are working long hours. And this repeatedly was shown in previous research. So I made a model, a different model, that was different from the usual labor supply model. And I thought that this was because Japanese long-term employment is not the same as what is usually found elsewhere. So I was, because I have many slides, I would just go on. My thesis tried to, well, there was about 20 to 30% wage gap between long-term employees and what is called, who are called part-time workers. There are many married women who are called part-time workers then. They were not necessarily part-time. Actually, half of them worked more than 30 hours a week then. But they were called part-time and paid hourly. And when you compare the wage rate between long-term employed women and these part-time women, even after controlling for education, experience, tenure, or occupation, or many, many variables, we still had about 30% wage gap between those who are called long-term employee and part-time employee. So first, because I was in economics, I had to be reasonable. So first I thought of compensating wage differential. That is, well, you choose to become part-timer because even though the wage is low, you have more freedom in choosing the time. You can switch from home production to work very easily. Whereas if you are a long-term employee, you have to be there at 8:30. You have to be there at least till 5. But usually you have overtime work, so you have to stay like 6 or even 7 sometimes. So first was compensating wage differential. And this I did with my 1980s data. So among the married women, 1/3 was actually self-employed or family employed, and 1/3 was long-term employee, and 1/3 was part-time. And so the first was I did compensating wage differential, and family workers, low wage, that was non-significantly different between part-time workers, could be explained from that model. But part-time workers, they could not work when they had small children. So it's not all compensating wage differential. So secondly, I checked whether it was an involuntary choice as a result of firms' hiring behavior. And I checked with male part-time workers and female part-time workers. And I found that among females, those who said I'm involuntary part-time was paid significantly higher compared with those who are voluntary part-time workers. So at least in the eyes of the employer, they were better workers because they are paid higher, but they were involuntary. This did not happen for male part-time workers. So I conjectured that if you're a male and if you want to work longer hours and if you try, you may be able to get into this long-term employment sector. But if you're a female, then it's more difficult that you get a bit higher pay, significantly higher pay, but you still are called part-time workers if you're female. And this is the involuntary part. But lastly, there was a work adjustment behavior that many married women try to keep their income below certain threshold. And because wage rate was low in 1980s, many women with low wage did not come to this threshold. But those women who had higher wage came to this threshold, and there they stopped their work. And these were among the part-time workers, these were the better educated, higher paid women. And these women should have change the market, but they stopped working right there. So they did not change the market. And why was that? Because they preferred not to pay the tax, not to pay the Social Security tax, and they preferred that their husband work longer hours because their husband's overtime pay was mostly much higher than their hourly pay. So this is my PhD thesis. And so when you look at labor market institution in the Japanese context, workplace conditions and norms, long work hours, overtime norms in large firms is a norm. And internal labor markets means long tenure in one firm is rewarded by promotions and wage increase, and very weak external labor market. So, well, recently there are more turnover, but it used to be very low. And also Japanese Supreme Court decisions have supported employers' authority to require employers to relocate and to work overtime. I think this is a very bad Supreme Court decision. For example, for a case when men had to relocate and his wife is working and had child below 6. And the man said that I can't relocate because my wife is working and we have small children and both of us need to take care. And the Supreme Court decision was that this man knew that he had to relocate once in a while when he entered this firm. And he is a sales force, so it was customary that he was placed from here to there 4 or 5 years, every 4 to 5 years. And so the Supreme Court said that this has to be something that workers have to accept. And this kind of court cases have continued and still have power today. Another court case is about low wage of part-time workers. Low wage of part-time workers were disputed, and then the lower court said that, well, if you are doing the same job, at least the wage should be 80% of what you are paying to long-term employees. And a very famous law professor of University of Tokyo, Sugeno, Dr. Sugeno and Dr. Suwa, wrote in a book that in Japan, there is no such same wage for same work principle. Because long-term employees, you are hired in a very long-term perspective, so your wage may be lower or higher, but you cannot compare that with part-time workers who are paid just hourly at that time. And they are very powerful professors, and this kind of thinking is still here in Japan. Okay, I think I'm talking just too slowly. And so I will just skip very quickly. Japanese income and tax and social security system. Here, the system favors men who has full-time, low-earning spouse. It's not gender biased. If it is woman and if she has low-earning spouse, they get the same benefit. But 98% of those low-earning spouse is women, actually, according to our statistics. And many spouses who earn below a certain threshold do not have to pay tax, and a bit higher threshold do not have to pay Social Security tax. And also, men working in large firms generally receive dependent spouse allowance from the firm. That if you are doing the same job and this man has low-earning spouse, if I don't have that, he will get higher pay in wage, in bonus, in retirement benefit, and even in public pension. That's the system that we have. So we have this kind of system. But the government has made various types of law, starting in Gender Equal Employment Opportunity Law of 1985. This came in right after I became a bank, entered a bank as a bank employee. And then in 1992, Child Care Leave Law. And because I didn't have Child Care Leave Law, I quit bank and went into academics. And I think it was the best idea that I had. I will show you how women fare in large enterprise in the last slide. And when I saw it, I thought, oh my goodness, I am so lucky that I didn't stay there. But many of my friends were clever enough not to stay. And so that's another reason that many well-educated, very intelligent women do not earn much, because many are full-time housewife, low-earning housewives, etc. Well, and the third one is trying to improve the part-time wage, and the fourth one is reform for childcare. And this has been very good. And the last one is law of work time reform and overtime cap. And well, I will just skip. And well, in work hour flexibility increased working women's demand for children. This Dr. Takatoshi was nice enough to invite me in 2014, and I reported on this. So I just skip this because I have only 5 more minutes. Okay, and then we see a strong rise of childcare. So childcare facility place increase had been discussed for many years, but it was very slow. But after 2013, there was law change, and it increased quite well after that. And changing company norms, it's important for fathers to have child rearing time. This This is the paper I did with Mary Brinton of Harvard University. She's a Japanese East Asian expert, and I thought that norms might be important for fathers to come home early to do the childcare work. And this is a panel survey, and I looked at the average housework share, and I found that at the largest firm, at the highest educated men, the share is the smallest. Because the company feels that they are paying so much and enough that men do not have to go home early. I did an interview with middle-sized firms, and I learned that at middle-sized firms, they are not paid that well. So the boss told me that we know they are not paid well, so they have to go home to help their wife because wife is working. And so I never heard this kind of story at large firms. So I checked, and it was at the large firms at best, with men with the best promotion prospect. They do the least housework. So I checked what happened if they moved to smaller firms. And what happened was all those who went to smaller firms did more housework, larger firms did less housework. And I call this average the norm of that place that they would look at. And so the norm, we try to say that has significant impact on how much men does the childcare. It's not that the man is very mean to the wife. It's a norm of the firm that they kind of cannot do it when the norm is like that. And we also found that if the husband doesn't do enough childcare work, if the wife is working, the spacing becomes long, that they cannot reach the second child. So this is a very important thing that we have to look at. And this is the last slide. I don't have much time, so this is the last slide that I will explain. This is a slide that I made from wage structure survey. And this is by cohort. this is university graduated men and women by different cohorts, and whether they were promoted to some kind of managerial job by age. And this is all men and women. These are both for large enterprises. I only chose large enterprise because they have distinct labor practice. So it's not by chance, but it is organized like this. And if you look at cohort, for example, when I entered the bank, there was women in these cohort, and I do remember them. While men were promoted, I have seen one of my colleague. She was in different section, but we had locker. We were neighbors, and we became kind of close. And when we were talking, she called some director in a name like, oh, Nantoka-chan, like very, very friendly. And I said, oh, and she said, we were the same year of entrance. So he became the director, and what she was doing was giving tea to the advisory board. And because she was there for many years, her job was very, very leisurely. So in a sense, it might be a good job. She gets good money. Well, I don't know if it's good, but by serving tea, who comes to the office once in a while, who retired from Ministry of Finance. So, and this is university graduate. Even for university graduates, okay, this is equal employment opportunity law cohort, this round circle. So, well, they are doing better than those 10 years younger, but there is much difference between males and females, and that haven't changed. And in the wage regression, in the promotion regression, using this estimation, women are less likely to be promoted if they have the same education. Like this is if you have 14 years, 16 years or more, you are more likely to be promoted. If you are a woman and 14 years, it's statistically significantly minus. If you have 16 years or more and female, statistically significantly minus. And for less likely to be promoted when you get aged. So with age, you are very much more likely to be promoted if you are male. If you are female, you're almost always very less likely to be promoted. And Prime Minister Abe had new law to promote women. Well, it's not just promotion, but it's called the Josei Katsuyaku Suishin Ho. And well, this is Abenomics, Womenomics period, and this is when the Josei Katsuyaku Suishin Ho was implemented. And they statistically significantly increased women's promotion. So they did have effect, but the minus effect of Asian education is so large that even though the policy had effect, it was very small. So why do Japanese women earn much less than men? So Japanese work conditions, the norm of long hours and relocation, as well as the social protection for housewives, has encouraged gender division of labor within family. Women have earned much less than men and have been promoted much less than men. Many of them are not hired in the same contact category as men, even at the start of employment, even today. Some are in the same, but even today. Chapters have shown that work-hour flexibility is important for working women to have children, and husband domestic work share increase is important for the second child, and the work culture is important for husband to do so. A long-term employment practice once praised, it was really praised and researched in many countries, especially in 1980s, as a source of motivation, a source of good human capital investment, as a source of good commitment. Well, it's not at all a good practice to realize high potential of working women. And Changes must come as fundamental, though we still see social support for the protection of housewives in company salary practice and social insurance law. Many women have to accept company-initiated relocation if they want to equal treatment as men, but such labor practice themselves should be changed. Our law defines equal work not only in terms of work content and responsibility, but also the extent of work allocation directed by firms. This extent of work allocation are often contracted at a young age in the long-term employment, that women who drop out and re-enter labor market are not hired in the same contract as men. Now that we are still in the age of, now that we work till the age of 60s or even more, equality of work should have more focus on what one do today and not in the long term. When gender equality in employment rose to a certain level and yet long-term employment rules and laws persist, I presume it works to decrease marriage and child intention. Making most of women's potential is indeed most needed in Japanese economy that foresees population decreasing, and we need fundamental change in the labor law that have supported long-term employed males and part-time working housewives. So this is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for wonderful presentation and food for thought. And so we're going to open to the floor the questions. But before doing that, I have some burning questions I want to ask.
Burning question.
So the Womenomics by Abenomics have great success in terms of raising participation rate, and we don't have this famous M-shape curve anymore. And so in that case, in that sense, that participation is now very much at par with the U.S. or even better than U.S.
Oh, yeah, much better. Yeah.
So problem is, I think, we still have some quality issue, quality of jobs, and to increase, well, you could say that equal pay for equal job, but the what does it take to increase the quality of jobs for women, and doing so to achieve the same pay for same task?
One of the things is to change the labor practice that usually, is this working? Usually in Japan, when you enter large firm, you are called like entrance of 1995 if you enter this year. Or if you are entered in 2010, you are called entrance of 2010. And the Human Resource Division manage the group of people of, for example, entrance of 2010, and they compete within the group. So when they are young, they are very close and good friends, but when they get to like age late 20s, and maybe there become small difference, and in 30s, the difference become larger. And by looking at their colleagues, you know how you are evaluated by the boss. And this was the way that the Japanese large firms have managed the entrance. So those who enter who are placed in this level is given the same wage. But usually, if you're a woman and was out of labor force like for 10 years, you are never placed in these category. You are in the category below the new entrants, called part-time. But what we have to do is to evaluate the ability and what they do, and not to make the wage progression by this age entrance year level. You have to, so in order to do so, you have to reduce the power of human resource department, and you have to increase the power of directors and the hires. And in doing so, because the firm have more employees than perhaps expected, maybe we cannot be certain that you have employment till the mandatory retirement. But by making those kind of change, you can have able women higher wage. And this kind of labor practice should be promoted with a campaign and with a good participation of large firms and good participation of academics and also labor union as well as government bureaucrats. That's what I think.
Okay. Well, that, the pay by age or pay by tenure, the length of the work applies to men too. So men with able, great performance and men with poor performance, they are paid same if you have the same
Well,
tenure.
not exactly the same, but not that large difference.
Right. So if we change that pay by age to pay by merits, then that could apply to men and also women too. Do you think?
Well, actually, what is called pay by merits in Japan, it was initiated in early 2000, and it was called disaster because Japanese bosses are not used to really evaluating, and even though they evaluated, they cannot fire their employees. So those are the employees that stays there, but you have to evaluate. And the evaluation was not so easy, and so it was called a disaster. And the merit-based system is not really popular right now.
Well, evaluation has to be 360 degrees.
And
It's
also
not
you
just
have
boss, but the
yeah.
subordinates and horizontal colleagues. And
and our system is that you don't fire. So that's the difference between U.S. U.S. you hire and fire. And you go to hire, you have the power to fire. But in Japan, if you hire at young age, you are usually able to stay for a long time, even though the evaluation difference may make the wage pass different. So in order to have more mid-entrants, you have to change this wage system. Yeah.
okay. So my second question, and this is last from me, is the fertility rate. And I think it's a number one long-term issues for Japan that fertility rate continues to decline, and the number of babies born every year is continuing to decline, and the hospitals who can handle the delivery is decreasing. That discourages the women to have babies. So what does it take to young couples to first get married, and second to have a baby, and third to have the second baby? What does it take to promote this?
Okay.
Given that they want babies.
Well, when I was doing interviews and analysis in 2010, there were many who wanted children but who could not because they feared of losing job when they have a child. So when the work flexibility came in, those who were waiting, got married and had job and had first child. That was in 2009, 10, 11, 12, around there. But could they have the second child? Not really, because men did not have enough time to support the child rearing. And then it's now 2025, and there was corona shock in between. And in 2021, there were many researches on fertility intention. Large one by government fertility survey, and smaller one. I did one, and also I participated in one web survey conducted by Cabinet Office. All of them showed a strong decline in child intention, very strong. And many women in this government survey, many non-married women said that, 1/3 said that, I expect that I don't get married and continue work, 1/3. But their ideal was not that. Their ideal, well, ideal of not having children have also increased to about 20%. But ideally, many wanted to have both work and family. But in reality, many expected that I'm only having work and not even get married. Why? Well, I think the labor market haven't changed enough, that you have to even be dependent on husband, but those kind of good income husband is declining because of we have more gender equality, that you have about the same wage as men. And when you get married, you get very much time pressed. And many of my students, I asked many of my students, because I'm very much concerned about fertility also. And many of my students said that, well, having child is a risk. And I said, what risk? It's a risk. You have to have good job. You have to find good husband. You have to have this and that and enough income. And then you can have a child. And I said, well, better done than think. But no one said, no one agreed with me. So what do we need? Well, at least for there are many women who are in non-standard job even when they're not married. So many of the protection, like childcare leave, childcare allowance, those have to go to these non-standard workers as well. This is the number one thing that I recommend. If we do this, it gets much better. Number two, change this relocation, this overtime, make it more free to fire, but more free to choose.
Okay, thank you very much. So I open to the floor the question. Yes.
Thank you for your talk today. Thank you. I had a question. I was kind of wondering, do you think that the changes such as those you discussed, including the relocation policy and also the wage increase and employment benefits, do you think that they have historically come from, and in the future, do you think they'll come more from the corporate side, so more of like a self-motivated or voluntary change, or do you think it will come more from a regulatory side?
Well, many big firms, very well-known firms, are telling me that young people do not like to relocate, that they have to change the policy. So changing this relocation policy may come kind of early from the firm side. But also, if you have long-term employment policy, you have to, and have so many branches, you have to really relocate. So that's one of the problems. And but regulatory side is important too. But there are some support from firm too. That's what I wanted to say.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Professor. Thank you for your talk. I want to build off that last question. I'm a researcher at Harvard Business School, and Tachiawe, which is a new research institute that's kind of looking to dig into some of these problems. You mentioned the kind of labor issues in this, but I think that question of what needs to happen on the corporate end is really important. You pointed to a few issues that have to do with culture. And you looked at men in these different kinds of firms, that whether there are these norms that will pressure them, or it seems like there's a policy question in terms of what the companies can actually implement, and then the willingness, I guess, to really grassroots from the bottom up kind of have this cultural mindset around empowering women. So if we want to put an optimistic hat on, post-COVID, I see a lot more young people who are pushing back on enkai, kind of going out where, kind of pushing back on long-term established norms. If we can assume that kind of firm cultural change is possible, what do you think are the levers that can be pulled? What do you think is some of the most compelling ways that some of these major firms can actually change their culture more than just at the kind of boilerplate policy level?
Change the culture. change the culture. Maybe participants who are from Japanese companies may have good idea.
Well, now there is severe labor shortage.
Oh, yeah.
So workers have more power to demand no relocation or no overtime work, and
Yeah.
that may drive the change.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
And also, if you are in 40s and 50s, you are already in this breadwinner housewife model. But for those in 30s, many long-term employees are double income couples, and their needs are very different from this breadwinner family model. That when these fraction of these workers increase, I think the culture will change a lot.
Okay, last question. This is overtime, but burning question, last question. Please keep it short.
Hi, I'll try to keep it short. My question is about how education can improve females' equal pay, because Japan, as a whole labor market, I think it's having a trend of job change, tenshoku, more common. And then one reason is to get better pay. And for that, the focus is on expertise, specialized in something. How can women leverage this situation and get into a better position? Because I don't think women is in that job exchange market in a good sense, like for better pay.
Come to Columbia Business School and earn this.
Sipa, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I did interview to managers, female managers, and I found that many female managers had their own job change by themselves, because good companies offer good paved road to men, but not to women. Many of the first-time managers were job changers themselves. So if you are, education, yes. I was going to say that in OECD countries, PISA result shows that among 15 of those in age 15, only in Japan, housewife becomes top 10 occupation. Yes. And in 2018 and the previous one too. That's my doctorate student wrote a doctorate thesis, and it was expected occupation at age 30. And this is absurd. This is so absurd. So we have to change education. Education, elementary education, high school education, and we have to also educate their parents too, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. It was very interesting. And thank you very much. And I invite you to check websites for more upcoming events of the CJEB. And lastly, I again thank our corporate and individual sponsors. Thank you very much.